Hello there. Where'd my microphone go? There it is. I had a discussion with some other people the other day about so-called AC generators, which are not generators at all. However, are manifestors of energy. They don't generate energy, they manifest energy. Of course, I've explained this many times. One of the things that people didn't understand is that I said an AC generator is an arch form. Yes, what's an arch form? It means it's a specific geometry that does something. Just like a symbol is representative of something, just like the alphabet, A means A. Anybody knows English? Like, it's representative of me saying, what happens when you see the letter A? I go, ah, right? This arch form, of course, is a specific geometry in which, in the case of a so-called AC generator, a temporal variant is introduced, and then we have, of course, the potential for power, but of course a load must be taken. And it was, I don't know if you know what a load is. Of course, a load is a power drain, whether it's your refrigerator, your toothbrush, this iMac, that decouples the energy off that so-called AC generator. And here's an important point, and I'd like to extrapolate on this, and this is a statement of fact, that a generator does not produce, i.e. manifest energy, until a load is applied. I don't know if you have a gas or propane power generator. I have one up in my cabin. It'll sit there and spin all day off of gasoline, for example, till it runs out of gas in case of a gasoline generator. It doesn't produce 1 volt or 1 amp of electricity until it sees a load, i.e. a parasitic load, something which decouples the energy off of that arch form, which of course has a temporal variant introduced to it, i.e. the armature in the case of the generator. The moment you do, of course, have a load applied to the generator while it's running, you can hear the motor labor and strain, and then, of course, only then is energy delivered. So I sit there all day long, burning up the gasoline, burning up the propane, but it won't produce or deliver anything until a load is applied. It'll burn up all the fuel. The generator, i.e. the manifestor, will run all day long. The armature and the, I don't know, it's a 3-phase, 4-phase, doesn't make any difference. It's not going to generate any power until a load is decoupled from it. It's not about the load, of course, either. Once again, it's about the temporal variable. What is the temporal variable that's causing ether, stress, or strain that we talk about what an AC generator, so-called, actually does? And these are the important questions that they never taught you in high school or college, and of course they didn't teach me, but I knew these people were mentally deficient because they weren't explaining any of the key aspects of a generator, as not James Clerk Maxwell, but Oliver Heaviside said that the huge generators at Niagara Falls were, quote, churning up the ether, which of course is exactly what they do. No generator does transformative power from the input from wind or hydroelectric or nuclear, which is just a huge steam turbine. What these things are meant to do is introduce a temporal variable in an arch form. Now there are reports, and I'm not going to say how speculative they are one way or the other, talk about backward engineered craft, from another world, that the main power generator, when it was deconstructed, the actual device, reverse engineering these craft, that the main load slab, i.e. the power generating matrix for these craft, was a semi-transparent, no moving parts. It only had one part. And the load was decoupled off of this monolithic slab. Whether that's true or not, I have no idea. I won't speculate on that. I obviously have no inside information on that. But the point that I have been focusing on for many years, and I've thought about this an enormous amount, is that there is another arch form, because the only thing and the only way power is manifest doesn't require a moving armature. Doesn't matter if it's an alternator, it doesn't matter if it's a so-called generator. We don't need to have a moving alternator, which of course is then the temporal component for the so-called generator against the magnetic field. You can either move the magnetic field against the armature, or you can move the armature against the magnetic field. Tomato, tomato. But the real point is, if we were more advanced creatures, some of us are, why would you need a moving armature or a moving magnetic binary field? What these two things do, and they're both simplex geometries, that's all any AC generator is an arch form. Yes? The arch form A represents the expression of the word The arch form X would be the representation of saying X. You know, these are not arch forms, but they're specific geometry meant to elicit something. Hoover Dam is convex against the water. That's the specific geometry for holding back massive trillions of tons of water. This is what I mean by an arch form. Nikola Tesla's AC generator is, of course, an arch form. The arch form, of course, introduces either a moving armature or a magnetic polarity against an armature for the manifestation of power. But since we only need the introduction of a temporal variable, there is already a temporal variable in each and every magnet. As I've explained over and over again 1,000 times, at least 1,000 different videos, and the reason why, of course, by the way, water is a polaric molecule, and every magnet has a phase disparity of a proportionality of 1 to phi. This is called the L'Amour frequency. It's also too called a magnetic moment. What it is simplex geomagnetic precession. This geomagnetic precession necessitates the introduction of a phase disparity, i.e. a temporal disparity between the North Pole and the South Pole, at a proportionality of 1 to phi. Since the only reason and the only way by which the arch form of the AC generator, which is not a generator at all, manifests power is from a moving armature or moving magnetic field, if we already have, of course, a temporal disparity between a North Pole and a South Pole. What this means is a single, no moving parts at all arch form necessitatively, undeniably, 100% must exist, whereby which the manifestation of energy is possible. Not possible, but an absolute reality. What is that specific arch form? A specific arch form means that there is not an armature, but a delivery system whereby which a load would be applied from a magnetic coil of magnetic disparity between the North Pole and the South Pole is applied to that armature off which a load is decoupling energy. This means with no input whatsoever other than the phase disparity of the magnetic field between a North Pole and a South Pole, we can have an arch form that delivers power to a load or loads. A load slab which is rated at, however many amps. Instead of a turning armature, which introduces this temporal variable, which of course manifests power, a magnetic phase disparity is placed upon a non-moving coil, instead of a moving armature. We don't need a moving armature. We don't need a moving magnetic field. The magnetic field, by definition, is already moving. Let me be very, very, very simple here too. Okay? Instead of a moving armature, different way, like an alternator, we have a moving magnetic field. In other words, we literally have a moving magnetic field against an armature. But the magnetic field itself already has a temporal variable baked into what magnetism is. You could look this up. It's not like an invention of mine, some idea, some crackpot notion that I have. Look up L'Amour frequency. Look up magnetic moment. This is gyromagnetic precession. Look up that too. Gyromagnetic precession, also too called L'Amour frequency, also too called phase disparity. So we have a temporal component already baked into the magnetic field. The only other thing is a delivery system for the load. A non-moving armature taking advantage of a pair of coils or more than one pair. It could be 4-phase or 6-phase, in which we could have different load slabs of non-moving components manifesting. Just a simple solid state, simple device with absolutely no moving parts at all, taking advantage of geomagnetic precession, which introduces a temporal variable into the manifestation of power. All generators, i.e., which are not generators, but all generators, are loads that, generator loads, are ether torsion decoupling drains. That's all any of this power manifestation is anyway. There is more than one way to introduce a temporal component into the manifestation of power. Current one is an alternator or a generator in which we have either a moving armature or a moving a magnetic field. But the magnetic field is already moving. Why spin a magnetic array against an armature? Well, it produces power. Yes, it does. But it has friction. It has all sorts of issues associated with it. Many moving parts which break down and have bearing issues. What if we had no moving parts and we just used the phase disparity of the torsion of geomagnetic precession itself to introduce the temporal variable for the manifestation of power? This is not a harebrained idea. This is not a crackpot idea. This must be the way of the future for power generation. However, that thought of fact is extremely dangerous to the power industry. Extremely dangerous, and I don't mean that lightly. It is extremely dangerous. Imagine everybody having two slabs. One slab that would run your whole house and all its loads, and another slab which would run your vehicle. You'd only ever have to buy two. They would essentially never break down. We wouldn't need oil anymore. We wouldn't need propane anymore. We wouldn't need to burn wood or fuel. You could even have a pocket one. It's like, say you had a cabin out in the woods, something really simple you could take and plug in, and you could run all your loads off your cabin or your tent, you know, something about the size of an iPhone. This is not any harebrained or crackpot idea. I've examined this extensively. Someone's going to say now, why don't you build one? Well, what if I was already trying to build one? I haven't got 30 pounds of various gauges of copper wire behind this camera for no reason. I hope I succeed at it. I've got 4 ideas on how to build one. Do I claim to know the answer on how to build it? I do not. I will not feign any such lie to you nor to myself. Is this the correct future arch form for power generation? Yes, because power generation only requires a magnetic field, an armature, and a temporal variable. The only thing that makes it work is the temporal variable. That's all the spinning armature does, that's all the spinning magnetic field does, is introduce a temporal variable. But the temporal variable is already there, which does not require a spinning armature. And that is the secret of free energy. And I don't say that lightly. I can't stand it when these other YouTubers throw around the words, free energy. Free energy is free energy. I got a free energy device. Yeah, sure you do. Sure you do. Show it to me. Show me the schematic. Yeah, I do have a free energy device. I'm just waiting on getting it patented. I can't stand that stuff. I'm not one of those people. I have no interest in even being even close to any of those people. They can't tell you, so how does free energy work? Does your device have moving parts? Sure it does. Oh, then you have to overcome friction and heat, air resistance, all this other stuff. There's no way you got a free energy device. You just got done saying your device has moving parts in it. Can't be a free energy device. Impossible. They got no answer to that because, of course, there is no answer. Completely talking out of their backsides. I'm telling you about the logical premise behind free energy. Is a temporal variable, which of course is the key, the alpha and the omega of power manifestation, which does not require a moving armature or a moving magnetic field. The magnetic field already has a temporal disparity, proportionality of 1 to phi. Thence the question is begged, what is the necessary geometry to take advantage of that temporal variable of the magnetic field itself? If I'm lying, I'm dying. I could not be more serious than a heart attack. Let me know what you think. I read every comment. Just be sensible and logical. Lux Everetas.